An embarrassment to Duke University. That's what the Duke Chronicle's editorial board is calling alum Heath Freeman. Freeman's family helped finance the Freeman Center. But now Heath Freeman is bringing shame to Duke, and journalists across the country have asked President Vincent Price to sever all ties. The story is exploding. The New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, Bloomberg, dozens of media outlets across the U.S. and as far as Europe are covering the story of how Freeman's greed is destroying the newspapers that our democracy relies on. Heath Freeman is the president of Alden Global Capital, a vulture hedge fund that owns Digital First Media, which at 200-plus newspapers across the country is the second largest newspaper company in circulation. According to the Washington Post, two things about the newspapers Alden owns are clear. They're profitable, and they've been hit with far steeper cutbacks than other newspapers. A destroyer of newspapers, reports Bloomberg. Freeman is cutting costs so he can pull out cash, and then, as the business dwindles because the product is damaged, he cuts some more, pulling out yet more cash while further damaging the product. Indeed, Freeman is being sued by an investor for hiding the funds he's siphoning out. The Nation reports, court records show that the vulture capitalists at Alden have bled at least $241 million in cash, plus many millions more in real estate from Digital First Media. Meanwhile, Alden borrowed $248.5 million from newspaper workers' pension funds and had the newspapers take on $200 million in debt to finance its own investments. But as the Washington Post and the New York Times have reported, journalists are fighting back.
A Colorado civic group expressed interest in buying the Denver Post newspaper, with investors already pledging $10 million in funds. The potential bid came after a rare revolt at the paper.
Outraged after yet another round of layoffs, Post employees called the paper's hedge fund owners in the pages of the paper itself, saying that their budget cuts are destroying the good journalism that the community relies on. From Denver, Barry Peterson has the story.
The Sunday editorial pullout section of the Denver Post was an act of defiance and desperation.
I felt like we call out other people who we feel like aren't doing their job or living up to their obligations. We should be able to call out our own owners, and that's why I did it.
What was the Post at its peak in terms of reporters and editors? How many?
Yeah, when I started here, there were like more than 300.
Editorial page editor Chuck Plunkett and a host of other writers criticized the paper's hedge fund owners, Alden Global Capital, for slashing staff, and they warned Denver it may lose its century-and-a-half-old newspaper.
Most of us think of newspapers as things that are losing money. Is that true here?
Media experts nationally and locally have reported that Alden's making profit of around 20%. That's another compelling reason to go with an editorial like this and let our readers know, hey, it's not this narrative that we're going down the tubes because we can't pay the bills isn't completely the narrative that you need to have in mind. There's something else going on here, too.
The striking perspective section included a photo filled with silhouettes. Those are the journalists who were laid off or have left since the paper won a Pulitzer Prize in 2013.
Duke has continued to accept this dirty money and is even sending Duke students to learn from Freeman. Does Duke University really want to be built on blood money from the destruction of our country's journalism and civic infrastructure? President Price, it's time to sever ties with Freeman.